Okay. And we're recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Why Am I Yelling Live, pre-recorded. We were having some technical difficulties. I don't know if it's maybe the wind happening in New York City today or whatever. I see my power lines are going back and forth, but our technical stuff was not working. So we're not on live today. We are recording on Zoom, and we are posting this for your viewing pleasure. So welcome. My name is Krista Rizzo. I am your host and the creator of Why Am I Yelling? And today we have Anya Ranganathan. Yes?
Perfect.
Okay. On our show, she is the co-founder of Bad Apple Produce. They are an online grocery delivery service with a mission to reduce food waste and hunger in New York and the New York City Metro area. They are almost 1 year old, so congratulations on your upcoming anniversary/birthday. And over this last year, Bad Apple Produce has recovered over 50,000 pounds. Think about that. That's a lot of pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables. And she's going to tell us all about how they get them, where they get them, and how it works. But they've donated over 10,000 pounds of this to hunger relief organizations and educational nonprofits. And they have saved their customers over $10,000 on their grocery bills. Like, that's insane. Anya, welcome to our show. We're very excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Krista. I really appreciate having a platform to talk about the things that I care about the most, which are food waste and food insecurity in the New York City area. And I wonder if now would just be a good time for me to kind of walk through what Bad Apple does, its mission, how we do what we do, and kind of walk everybody who's watching at home through it. So Bad Apple, at the crux, is an online grocery delivery service. So everybody is, familiar with your Fresh Directs, your Amazon Prime grocery delivery. And so the distinction between what we do and what companies like that do is that we have a really unique sourcing model. And the sourcing model basically is one that we developed because so much food in the US goes to waste for no good reason at all.
Right,
so
right.
Particularly in the fresh fruit and vegetables industry, there are a number of different reasons why items go to waste. We see that about 50% of fresh fruits and vegetables don't actually make it to the end user. And there are a number of different reasons why this is the case, some of which include ones that you'd expect, like, when you're dealing with a perishable product, if it's not stored in the right conditions or it's not being transported properly, then you would expect that, these items might not last as long as they would normally. But there are also lots of reasons why produce goes to waste in the US that are reasons that are completely avoidable. And the big reason is that standard retailers like your Whole Foods, your ShopRites, your Fairways, they have really narrow aesthetic requirements for what they're willing to purchase. And this can be literally as arbitrary as we're getting in a load of red apples, and if the surface area of those apples isn't more than 50% red, we don't want it.
Stop it.
Yes, quite literally at that level of
That's crazy.
Like, it's insane. And it can also come down to things like shape. I'm sure that plenty of the people that are watching right now have grown fruits and veggies in a garden. And, when you're growing a pepper out in nature, it's not always perfectly symmetrical.
Right.
Yeah. So it's got its lumps and bumps, and that's completely natural and normal. But those sorts of items, if they're in the commercial produce stream, tend to get sorted out before they actually make it to the supermarket, because the retailers have this silly opinion that if something isn't perfectly symmetrical, that a buyer isn't going to want to purchase it. And so we work with all sorts of suppliers within 100 miles of New York City, and we purchase off, the items that may be the wrong color, maybe the wrong shape, maybe the wrong size, or it even could be the case that the retailer just has a lot of extra, potatoes one week, and they need that last minute buyer for it. And so we're basically rescuing produce from all of these different vendors, and then we put it online at a pretty steep discount to what you'd be able to get at a Whole Foods. And then people can pick whatever they want, and we deliver directly to their doorsteps, which is really convenient in a New York City setting.
It's amazing. I mean, I seriously can't wait to like start ordering. I'm not kidding. Not even a joke. So tell me how you started your love affair with this, because this is not something somebody would think that is like going to be a passion project for something. Like, you went to Duke University. I don't know if that had in like your experience and all that kind of, so just talk me through like how this whole thing started.
Yeah, absolutely. So my love affair with produce actually did start at Duke. So the summer after my sophomore year in college, God, it's crazy even thinking about the fact that this started when I was 19, but it did, in the public sector. So I was interning at the mayor of Durham's office, and Durham is the city in North Carolina that Duke is in. And they basically brought on a couple of students to assess the data that they collected from a survey that they did on quality of life throughout the city. And basically what they wanted us to do was say, here are all these data points, use statistics, synthesize all the data into some potential action items that we can work on. But that summer, it wasn't really the quantitative data that really stuck out to me. It was actually the fact that so many people in Durham were saying things like, I want to eat healthy, but all of the fruits and vegetables at the grocery store are super expensive and the quality is just not that great. Like when I buy it, it doesn't last very long in the fridge. Right. Which, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us in New York City can empathize with that. I'll, find myself, say I buy something from Trader Joe's, maybe a clamshell of spinach. I often find that it wilts within 3 days, before I can even think about eating the spinach. Yeah. So I think that these are definitely issues that resonate with all sorts of folks, not just people living in Durham, North Carolina. And so I studied economics when I was in school. So typically when somebody tells me about poor product or a price that's different than they expect, my immediate thought was always, okay, so let's learn more about the supply chain for produce. Because if we look at the different players that are involved in getting that product from the farm to the grocery store, maybe we can learn about why it is that it's not good quality and much more expensive than you'd expect it to be. And so what I learned in doing all of that research is that there are so many reasons throughout the life of a piece of produce that can result in it going to waste. On the farm, it's typically because of weather-related damage or pest damage, which is expected.
Sure.
But then once the produce gets harvested, it gets sent to what's called a packing house. And what a packing house is, it's basically a place where all of the different produce items are sorted by size and quality. And in this process, a lot of items that are really high quality get sorted out of the supply chain, and folks say, all right, this is not necessarily A, fit to be sold in a grocery store, or B, fit for human consumption. And then as things continue down the supply chain, at the distributor level, which is kind of the middleman between the farm and the commercial grocery store, distributors may experience a situation where they have way more potatoes than they expect and they just don't have a buyer for it. And so if there's way more than they expect, it's really difficult sometimes to find another customer for something that you expected somebody else would buy. Right. And then at the grocery store level, mismanagement of inventory and excess purchasing can result in things getting wasted as well. So it was kind of learning about all of those separate points where perfectly good food is not making it to the end user. That's what really made me passionate about this cause and motivated me to start Bad Apple Produce.
And so you came back to New York and said, I'm going to do this here.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do it here rather than staying in North Carolina? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So I actually, when I was in school, did start a kind of similar company to Bad Apple Produce with a co-founder. But what really motivated me to bring the concept to New York City was a couple of different things. I mean, I think that every New Yorker can empathize with the fact that going grocery shopping is horrible. Like, we don't have cars.
Yes.
Everything that we want to buy, it has to be light enough that we can physically carry it back on the subway to potentially an apartment building that doesn't have an elevator.
Yep.
The pricing is really high relative to other places in the country. And the quality isn't always that great, just because, you know, when you have a grocery store that has a really high volume of people coming in, the inventory management isn't always that great. So you get, you know, your spinach that goes bad in 2 days.
Yep.
And so my thought was that this model would work really well in New York because people are price conscious because it's an expensive city.
Yep.
People struggle to go grocery shopping in the traditional way. So grocery delivery would be a really appealing model.
Sure.
And folks here are also really conscious about sustainability. You know,
Yep.
I think of the city as one where people are constantly thinking about the ways that they can reduce their footprint.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it was definitely a business model that resonated with a lot of folks here.
I love it. So when you started, how did you approach your suppliers? And is it something that, you know, I'm sure it's something they're excited about. They're getting rid of stuff that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to get rid of, right? And, you know, what's your turnaround, right? So walk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So approaching suppliers in the New York City area was pretty easy just because the average grower, the average wholesaler does either have excess supply or items that are cosmetically different. And the market for those sorts of items is a lot more difficult in general. So suppliers were definitely welcoming an outlet for either last minute selling or folks that would come in and buy stuff that wasn't necessarily for their commercial buyers. So the approach was very easy. I would just usually tell a wholesaler or grower, this is what we do. And like, great, we're on board. Can we sell to you tomorrow? Yeah. So it was not a very difficult sell at all. And then what was it? What was the second question that you asked?
I think it was, the turnaround. Like, so how do, when you like pick up the produce and get it to people. So, you know, like you said, a lot of times stuff goes bad quickly and that kind of thing. So how do you manage that?
Yeah. So we have extremely tight inventory management for 2 reasons. You know, one, we're a food waste company, so we want to make sure that we're not buying extra and have to waste items. But 2, you know, when you're dealing with a perishable product, you have to be extremely on top of the amount of shelf life that it has left on it, when you're getting it to the customer, etc. So our standard is that we never purchase anything from any of our suppliers that has less than a standard shelf life.
Okay.
Typically, it has more shelf life than what a usual customer would purchase for a grocery store, because if we're going directly to the farm, we're cutting out a couple of middlemen before it gets to our warehouse. And really, the kind of lead time is that we typically let customers place orders up until 4 days before their delivery, and then we'll pack their orders the day after they're set, and then they go out to the customer 4 days after they originally placed it.
Okay. So, so now your customers are like, I can order from you.
Yep.
Just a random mom.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. We don't really play in that B2B space. And the reason is because an average business is buying in large enough volumes that they can benefit from wholesale pricing.
Sure.
But the average consumer, like you and me, if we're not buying in bulk, we can't benefit from that price differential.
Right.
Yeah. So a big part of what we're trying to do is offer the average mom or the average grad student in New York City the benefit of wholesale pricing and discounts when they wouldn't ordinarily be able to get them in the retail setting.
And where is your distribution center?
Yeah. So we have two major places where we distribute from. All of our packing happens in a facility in East Rutherford, New Jersey, which is just
Yep,
right
right
across
over
the
the bridge.
bridge.
Yep.
It's where basically where Giant Stadium is, if
Yep.
you guys are familiar with the area. It's about 2 miles outside of the city. And then we have a area that we accept and aggregate a lot of our produce in the Bronx. So
Okay.
that's also extremely close to our customer base. So we're able to ensure that the produce really stays fresh because we're not really shipping it
You're
very
not far. Right.
Yeah.
How big is your customer base currently?
Yeah, so we're kind of leading up to our 1 year anniversary. We're at about 500, which is
That's
exciting.
great.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. I'm so excited for you. I think this is a great idea. It's a great model. It is. I mean, I live in Brooklyn, and I know that we have like all of these like fruit and vegetable stands.
Yeah.
I have found that as somebody who, you know, I have 2 kids and I buy a lot of food. I have 2 growing boys and a husband that eats like a teenager. So we spend a lot of money on groceries. That's pretty much
Sure.
our one of our biggest bills, right? Um, and I have made it a point to kind of not stop going to the local grocery stores, but I'll go to the local fruit and veggie stands and buy like vegetables day of, because
Right.
it's like, okay, you know what? Sometimes they mark it down and it's like, oh, here's that spinach that's about to wilt and you're not going to want to use it on Thursday, but if you're making something tonight, you can have it for $1. And it's like, yeah, I'm totally doing it. But if I could like cut that out and find a service where it could come to my door and be on my doorstep on a Tuesday and you know, be have a cost difference from my local Key Food or my Whole Foods or wherever, that's a big deal for even for families, I think, because you know, feeding your people, you know, wholesome, mostly organic, that gets really expensive. And you know, that's my gripe with the whole, you know, food industry. It's like, why do you make things that are prepackaged and full of preservatives so inexpensive? And an apple is $2, right? So it's the trade-off. So I love what you're doing and I think it's amazing. And so now how do you turn this into your relief organization work, like your charitable, your that piece? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're first and foremost a company that delivers fruits and vegetables, but the way that we achieve our mission to also reduce hunger in the New York City area is by partnering with some great organizations that really specialize in that capacity.
Yep.
So we have a feature where folks can tack on a donation to the food bank for New York City, just
Amazing.
right on to their delivery when they check out. They could do it on a recurring basis. They could just do it one time. And we donate all of the aggregated funds to Food Bank every single quarter because they're an organization that really specializes in hunger relief. And so we think that the greatest impact that we can have is support their work,
Yes. Yep.
instead of trying to set up capacity when that's not necessarily what we're set up to do.
Sure.
And another way that we just try to support organizations in our area is we occasionally do have some excess supply just because it's impossible to 100% forecast
Of course.
exactly which inventory
Yeah.
you're going to need. You know, it's a dynamic industry. People may decide that they're going to be out of town last minute.
Yeah.
You may have a holiday, and it can be difficult if a bunch of people go out of town to know exactly how many people are
Yes.
going to go out of town. So, you know, sometimes we have excess supply too. And so what we do is we donate all of our excess supply to City Harvest, which,
I love them.
you know, is a fantastic organization in the city that does food recovery at businesses, restaurants, as long as the food fits a certain profile. Typically, they're not able to recover food that's already been served, so to speak.
Right.
As long as it's packaged and meets certain standards, they're come to their facility and then they'll pick it up for you. And so we support their work because they have a number of partners that they distribute the food that they aggregate to.
Yes. I love that. And so what is the plan for the future of Bad Apple Produce? Like, what do you envision this being in the next 3, 5, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, it's really funny that you asked me that question because we're actually in the early stages of building out the future of Bad Apple Produce right now. So to give you a little preview, you know, something that we've learned a lot in doing this work is that people care a lot about knowing where their products come from. And that's not necessarily just the food that they eat. That's the clothes that they buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the furniture that they purchase for their homes. That's the home care products that they use, for their laundry or spray in their house in the form of cleaners. And so really what the future of Bad Apple Produce is, and we're actually in the process of setting all of this up and have had a lot of communication with some of our first vendors, is we really want to be a platform where folks can come and have a one-stop shop for vetted sustainable products. And we are envisioning a kind of marketplace where folks can come in and buy an apple that is maybe less than 50% red that couldn't go to the grocery store, but also could buy, say, a cleaner that doesn't necessarily have all of the additives and has maybe more sustainable packaging than a traditional cleaner.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think that, so my son actually goes to an environmental studies high school in New York City.
Amazing.
And they do all I'm like, I feel like they need to take a class trip to your facility, but that's a whole different conversation. But they do think, and so it's wonderful to see that this is the wave of the future. This is how we're thinking. This is how, we're operating as, human beings and consumption wise. Clearly we have a long way to go, but you have to start somewhere, right? And so what you're doing is you're educating and you're providing and you are joining the fight for creating a more sustainable living environment for us. And we do live in the biggest city, in one of the biggest cities in the world, with a lot of people, and it's hard to get what you need sometimes because stuff is expensive and it's hard to find, and there's a lot of different logistics that go into it. So your stuff is awesome. So thank you so much for doing it. I cannot wait to see like how big this gets, because it's going to be ginormous, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see where the company goes, and I'll have to keep all of you guys updated.
Yes.
When we launch our platform that offers all sorts of different products. The preliminary launch date is looking like Q3 2020. We're really working towards it. We've spoken with hundreds of vendors and already have 50 outreach. And I think it just goes to show that all sorts of folks, on the consumer side, but also folks that are innovating different sorts of sustainable products, everybody is looking for a space where doing.
Yeah, totally. I agree. So on that note, I thank you so much for sharing this with us. Don't go anywhere. We're going to stop recording and we're going to chat for a moment. So thank you for being here. Everybody follow Anya. We are going to put all of her social media handles, and I assume it's badappleproduce.com is where they can go to get their own accounts and start ordering your own Bad Apple Produce, because who cares if your apple is half red? I don't know. But that's funny that you say that, because my son really likes green apples. And so I bought some green apples, but they had a little bit of red on it. And he was like, I'm not eating them. I'm like, oh, yes, you are. And I was like, because it tastes exactly the same. And he was like, oh, yeah, it does. I was like, yeah, it does. So thank you for being here. Sit tight. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Get yourself some Bad Apple Produce if you live in the New York City area. And we will be back next week. Hang on. I have to figure out how to stop recording this.